Well, we've been home from our Pacific Northwest adventure now for a little over a week now, and I thought it'd be kind of fun, especially considering that my kids rarely get to see much different kinds of transportation. After all, in the Midwest, pretty much we've got car, bus, and train. That's about it. We experienced quite a bit more on our adventure, so I thought it might be kind of fun to reflect on some of what we experienced on our adventure. For starters, we flew on Alaska Airlines to get out there, and that was kind of a treat in itself. And then once we got to Seattle, we rode around in a rental car, and was actually the one we rode. It was a Kia Soul, red, and my kids could tell you stories about that. And then when we spent some time in Seattle, we got to ride on a couple different things. One was a mini cruise boat. That's the Argosy Harbor Tour boat that we got to spend an hour on out in traveling around the Elliott Bay. And then we rode the ferry out to Bremerton, and that was pretty cool for Susanna. Her only experience of a ferry was watching on her show, her kids' cartoon show called Caillou, where they rode on a ferry. Also, in his case, on a trip to Canada. And so it was pretty cool for her to see us actually drive the car into the boat and park the boat and then get out and walk around and then ride the whole way across, about an hour trip across the Puget Sound. And then when we got back to Seattle after our time in Portland, we went to visit the Space Needle and, of course, had to ride the monorail, which was kind of cool. And then after that was done, when we were exhausted, we had parked down near the Amazon Go store in the headquarters there, and our feet were exhausted, and it was probably like 8 or 9 blocks away. So we were grateful for one of these passenger bicycles like that. So all three of us crammed into the back seat of one of those and paid the guy $15, and he took us over to where our car was parked, and that was pretty cool. Then we had to get back to the Amtrak station to head north to Vancouver, and so we took the elevated light rail. This Sound Transit Link is what they call it there, up to the Amtrak station, and then we rode Amtrak all the way north along the Pacific coast up to Vancouver, and it really did hug the shore for probably good 70% of the trip there. Of course, on the way up, it was mostly dark after the first hour, but on the way back, we got to have gorgeous scenery, much like you see in the picture here. And then in Vancouver, now in the first part of our trip, we had used a rental car, so that wasn't, pretty much everything we needed to do, we were able to do in the rental car. But I knew Vancouver had incredibly good transportation, so we didn't need that once we got up there. Here is a SkyTrain which we rode. It's a kind of a combination of an elevated rail train and subway, both, depending on where it goes. And then the Sea Bus, which is unique, I believe, to Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. And it's actually a kind of like a pontoon boat, more like a catamaran with a bus kind of facility on top. It's just rather unique. And then a couple times we used a taxi cab, not the one in the back, but the one there in the front there, the extra small one, cramming us all in there with our luggage. That was interesting, but it got us places we needed to go quickly. And, of course, there was a city bus. We used those a lot. And the highlight was the seaplane, where we got to take off and land from the water and ride in a seaplane. In fact, the one pictured there, I'm pretty sure is the one very similar to the one we were in. Then there was the trolley buses. They're articulating buses, meaning they can bend as they articulate or navigate down the road, and they follow a prescribed course. Now that particular one there looks like it's electric powered, but it has the wheels, but there are some other ones that actually follow train tracks. And then on our trip up Grouse Mountain, we rode on a mountain tram. So here's just a picture of some of the transportation networks. This is just the SkyTrain routes, and then if you look at this picture, this shows you just how extensive Vancouver's transportation network is, and I'll zoom in a little bit more. You can see the areas where we spent the most time. Between buses, SkyTrains, and some of the other transportation options are available. Pretty much you can get anywhere you want to go within the city within roughly 4 to 6 blocks of where you need to go. And so I was able to plan out all of our adventures to coincide with bus stops or train stops, and just took the right combination of adventures. In fact, the place we stayed, the North Vancouver Hotel, I had picked that not only because I had stayed there before, but because it was centrally located between 3 different bus stops. And so one bus literally picked up right behind the room we were staying in. If we had opened up the back window of the hotel we were in and dropped a rock out there, it would have hit the bus stop. That's how close we were, 20 feet away from it. Another bus stop was right at the front entrance to the hotel. And then a third bus stop was about a block away. And so pretty much all the adventuring and trips we had to make, we could do right from just walk out to the bus stop and catch the bus to the next thing. We also got to see some iconic places. This is Waterfront Station, rather historic building. And there's below is the interior of the station. Sometimes that's even mistaken for Union Station. And it appears in a few movies. So here's scenes from Once Upon a Time, from the pilot from season 1. Where Henry pulls up in a bus. The bus says Boston there, but it was actually filmed right at Waterfront Station in Vancouver. And so that shot down there in the lower right is an aerial view of Henry approaching on bus and then taking a cab at Waterfront Station. And then here's what that same Waterfront Station looks like on the waterfront side, which this is the C-Bus terminal there. We also, a couple times, were at Pacific Central Station. That's where the Amtrak arrived late at night. That's also where we went early a.m. the morning we headed home. And Susanna was quite the trooper. In fact, Jeremiah and Susanna both really caught on and kind of enjoyed it. Here we are riding the bus over the Lionsgate Bridge. On the map on the right, you can kind of see we've crossed over into Stanley Park. They got the hang of it pretty much. They did sit down some. They like to stand up some, but here they're acting pretty cool and happy riding the SkyTrain here, although here I think they're underground. A few times it got rather crowded. This was one of the buses, and this is what was not near as crowded as one of them got. I remember going to church on Sunday morning. They piled more and more and more people in, and Jeremiah was like, "Where are they going to fit everybody?" And then they stopped, made another stop, and let more people on. Eventually, they did turn a few people away and said we're full, but that was quite interesting to see how full we could pack that bus. And then the next several images and videos I'm going to share are from the SkyTrain, which this is what that looks like. So this gives you a good feel for what the SkyTrain is like to ride it. This is a point of view video that I found online. It was kind of cool to be able to ride above everything and be able to see all the scenery and not have to worry about constant stops. Here we are riding past, there's the stadium, pulling into one of the stops here. This was a typical SkyTrain stop. And the kids caught on really quick how to get where they needed to be. And of course, I'd been to most of these places already before, so I knew kind of how to guide and coach them and interpret which way we needed to go, which side of the tracks we needed to be on, and all of that. And then here we are going into the downtown underneath of Vancouver. So this is the subway part of the SkyTrain, and here's a underground SkyTrain station. Here we are back at Waterfront Station, and here's Susanna enjoying the SkyTrain back from Brighouse Station, which is Richmond area. They're not kind of around Steveston Village, Once Upon a Time area on our ride back. We were talking about some of the stops. They had some funky names as far as she was concerned. On this day it was raining a bit. We're pulling into one of the highly elevated stations. And Jeremiah is totally engrossed in his phone, either apps or messaging, so that was quite typical. Although he did become quite a bit of a help after he got the hang of this. He started looking up when the next bus was going to arrive and double-checking my route maps to make sure that what I thought was going to be the next bus we should be on was the right one. And a couple times he actually found better route combinations than I had found. So here's that articulating bus, which bends in the middle, There's actually one kind that bends in 2 places. But when we saw this seat here was open, Susanna was pretty excited to sit in it because it's where it bends. And this next one, you'll see her response to it as we go around the corner. She got pretty excited about that. And here we go. And she's, yep, bending. There we go. And here's Vancouver City Station, the underground part of that. City Center Station. And now there's a story here with these. So these are the compass card gates. That's how they control access to who's paid and who's not. We were able to buy a day pass for everybody, and so it was all on this one little kind of paper card where they kept track of how much we had paid and where we were allowed to travel. And there's these little, well, here I'll show a picture of Susanna waving the card over it. And so when you wave your card over it, it registers that you're a fare-paying passenger and tracks that, and then the gates open. However, the very first one of these we went through was to the C-Bus station, and she was so gung-ho and excited that she wanted to be able to try out this cool thing and like swipe her card and make the gate open. But she did it immediately after Jeremiah had done his, and so Jeremiah swiped his card, gate opened up, walked right on through. Susanna walked right up before it even shut, and she swiped her card, and suddenly the gate shut on her, and she's like, "What?" And I wish I had that on video or picture of her reaction, because she was just blown away that the gates, she thought she was opening it, instead they shut right on front of her. And so after that, we figured out, well, basically she was premature in her scan, and so we scanned her card again. It opened up just fine. She got through. And so after that, we worked out a system where Jeremiah would go through first in one lane, she would go through next in the other lane, and then I would go through last in the first lane. And that way we didn't ever accidentally double swipe, and one of us was always able to help her through and ensure that she got through. And that went really well. But it was quite an adventure that first time. And we got everybody where they needed to go. The kids were all happy, and I'm quite pleased with how the whole trip turned out. Here we are posed in front of the seaplane with our pilot, and Susanna got to ride up front with her in the cockpit and listen to her communication with the tower control, so that was all pretty cool. And then we hopped in a plane and flew back home after about 6 days, almost a week, of adventure in the Pacific Northwest. In fact, that picture there in the upper left is us landing in Salt Lake City on our way back to Indianapolis. So there's our adventure and a recap.